Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Chicago League's morning briefing for August. My name is Jane Ruby, and I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Chicago. And thank you to everyone for joining us on this early Saturday summer morning. This is a really exciting briefing about a incredible collaboration that we are happy to be a part of and kind of soft launch on this morning for us. We're gonna have more, formal announcements this upcoming week, about our role in this collaboration. But I'm thrilled to have our speaker, Agnes Gray from Common Cause. Besides being just a badass woman and soon to be mama, she's also a very good friend of mine, and I am happy to do all of the work in making Chicago a better place with her. So just a little few words about our two organizations, and then I'll turn it over to her. So first of all, as many of you know, the League of Women Voters of Chicago is a nonpartisan grassroots organization working to protect and expand voting rights and ensure everyone is represented in our democracy. We empower voters and defend democracy through advocacy and education. The League of Women Voters encourages informed and active participation in government while influencing public policy. We never endorse or oppose political parties or candidates, but we are political. And we sort of serve in two roles: voter service and citizen education. And we also have a arm that is action and advocacy. And we are a full-on 501c3 nonprofit organization. For more information about what we do, I highly recommend going to lwvchicago.org, and especially our events calendar. Going into the fall, we have a lot of really great programs that we are, bringing not just to our league members, but also to the general public. Everything from topics around mis and disinformation, youth voter registration. We even have a film festival in September that we will have more information on. So I highly, recommend you checking out our events calendar. Um, and now about Common Cause. So, Common Cause is a nonpartisan grassroots organization dedicated to upholding the core values of American democracy, whose primary goal is to work to create an open, honest, and accountable government that serves the public interest, promote equal rights, opportunity, and representation for all, and empower all people to make their voices heard in the political process. Representing over 1 million members nationwide and offices located in roughly 30 states, Common Cause has been dedicated to holding power accountable to the people for more than 50 years. And what's also really nice about sort of our collaboration is both of our organizations sort of have that local impact grassroots nature, and we also have kind of those national umbrellas that we can also operate. So there's lots of room for our two groups. We've both been in this space for a really long time at different tiers and levels of government to sort of work together. So it is really exciting to have Common Cause on this with us. So without further ado, I will turn this over to Agnes.
Thank you so much, Jane, for that wonderful introduction. I always love working with you all at the League of Women Voters of Chicago, and I'm really excited about this partnership. So for this particular briefing, I'm going to start with an overview, and it's going to be brief, but just to talk about election protection and why it's so important and why this partnership is important. And then Catherine, we're gonna have like a question Q&A after, because we know there will probably be some questions, and then we'll go into the actual training for those of you who are interested in participating in the training, and going ahead and getting that out of the way so that when the time comes for the November election, you're already trained. All we have to do is get you your materials, your shirt, and get you registered for your shifts in your locations. So I'm going to go ahead and prepare to share my screen. Just give me one moment.
And while you're doing that, I would like to announce that we have a formal partnership. We'll be sending a press release out soon, but we feel that we can do a soft launch for our press release here today. So we are formally a full partner of election protection in Illinois, Chicago.
Yes, that is absolutely true, and that is we are very excited about this partnership. All right. So as Jane already described, I am with Common Cause Illinois, but we are a national organization. And so we have state offices across the country. My name is Agnes Gray. My email is listed at the bottom if you need it, but I also know that Catherine will be dropping that in the chat in case you need to access that and reach out to me for any reason. So let's talk about voting 101 in Illinois. It's important to understand that part of the reason why election protection is so integral to what we do and so important with the election is because voters actually have rights. So there is a list of Bill of Rights that voters have, and this listed out very clearly. Voters can cast their ballot without interference. Um, Vote if you are in line by 7 p.m. You can go to your home precinct and present IDs on election day. You can also register to vote or update your registration and cast a ballot on election day as well. That's what makes Illinois unique because not all states are like that. In addition to that, vote at your old polling place if you moved less than 31 days before the election. You can get help from the election judges or from an eligible relative or friend if you need the assistance. Um, in addition to that, a voter can use endorsement, sample ballots, or notes while voting. You can also protect the secrecy of your ballot. That's a right that you have. You can check your ballot choices and correct any mistakes and have your ballot counted fairly and impartially. And last but not least, have your young children with you in the voting booth. And so part of election protection is making sure that these rights are not infringed upon. But in order to be able to make sure that things are running smoothly and that voters' rights are protected, we have to have people out in the field. So let's look at what voter support looks like. So before election day, a lot of people mistakenly think that election protection is just something that happens on election day or during early voting, but this is a 365 day a year effort. Okay. So before election day, we're building relationships with election officials. We're monitoring and addressing polling place changes because we know from election to election there might be some changes in the polling place locations. We also consider what issues to anticipate and we work on coordination on how many poll monitors we need to actually be able to address any issues. And then, of course, on election day, we're still working with local elected officials to solve problems, extend polling hours, remove police presence. I want to be clear when I talk about removing police presence, we understand that there are going to be certain locations where security is a normal thing. So we're not talking about those locations. We're talking about locations where security is not the most normal, and for whatever reason, um, they've decided to just have an abundance of security or officers at a specific polling location because this can be perceived as intimidation. So once again, it's a case by case situation, but if it's needed, and if in that particular community having police present is deterring people from going to the polls, then that's something that we like to monitor and we like to try to address it if we can. After election day, of course, we work to change the voting process through administrative changes or legislation. And then we do legal and policy advocacy when necessary. So this can be at any point. This can be before, during, or after the election. As we get more information, as we understand what's ahead, at any point, we will try to do either legal or policy advocacy to make sure that when the next election comes up, we're addressing some of the concerns that we experienced. It's really important to understand that um, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under law is a partner in this. They actually man our hotline. So if you don't remember anything else, please remember 866 our vote. that number is so important. Whether you're a volunteer or whether you're going to vote or you have a family member or a friend who reaches out to you about issues at the polls, this number is what's going to get them the assistance that they need. And the beauty of this is there are actually trained attorneys on the other end. And then there are also some other legal assistants who are helping to answer various questions that people have about the election. And this is not just on election day. This hotline actually opens up during early voting, and it goes from early voting through election day. The hours differ from early voting to election day, but this resource is there. And as you see, we have different hotlines so that we can reach as many communities as possible. So we have a Spanish hotline, an Asian language hotline, and an Arabic hotline. And who knows, the next election, we might have other numbers as well. As we see the need, we try to fill in those gaps and make sure we are accessible to anyone who might need the resource. So let's talk about some of the common issues and challenges that we tend to see in the field. This is really important because it highlights why election protection is needed, not just across the country, but we're going to focus in a little bit more on Illinois. Because a lot of times I hear, oh, we're good here in Illinois, everything's fine. Well, you're about to see some key examples of what we have actually received to the hotline in terms of different issues or challenges. So, first and foremost, it's important to understand that even in more highly resourced clerks' offices, election administrators are stretched, and therefore support for our election administrators. Administration system that's very necessary. Okay, we're seeing a lot of people who have been in this work for a long time. They're starting to retire, and to be honest, the job of our election administrators not getting any easier. So this is a great way to support them and to uplift them because the work that they do is so important. And without them, we would not have our free and fair elections. We also want to address election falsehoods about eligibility and ID requirements. You'll see later where I talk about some of those false narratives that have been put out there. And then additionally, voter support is needed for general questions and concerns. So yes, there are going to be big issues that occurs at the polls, but then it might just be something general where voters just aren't sure. And so having somebody there is very helpful in that. Talking about misinformation and disinformation. We're hearing a lot about this right now, but let's be honest, it's always been a factor, but it really took a turn in 2016 with Russian interference. And then in 2020, we, had the narrative of election denialism. And then in 2022, the creation of fabricated news sources, and this is both print and online, and this is throughout the state of Illinois. So Illinois is very unique in the sense that while we are not a swing state, there is actually a report out, and I will share this with Catherine so that if you all want to try to reach out to receive it and be able to read that report. But what we have in common with a lot of the swing states is that we are a state that is highly targeted for misinformation and disinformation. And so imagine the level of impact that that's going to have on voters when they're going to the polls, or that might even sway somebody to not go to the polls and vote at all. So we need to be honest and we need to really keep an eye out on this because once again, it could very well change someone's opinion about the election, and also, it just might, a lot of times, mis and disinformation is intended to sow distrust in the process. And we know, as people who have been in this field, who work closely with election administrators, that there is nothing to be worried about. But that's exactly what mis and disinformation is intended to do, is to sow doubt, fears, concerns, to the point where people just don't want to engage at all. A big thing is artificial intelligence. Like we've been dealing with mis and disinformation, but what makes 2024 so unique is that now we have the influence of artificial intelligence. AI can be used for precise and personalized targeting messages. And then also it automates election administration, maintaining media, and accelerating disinformation. Artificially generated images have already been deployed to create confusion around our elections. Not just images though. It's so advanced that even videos are available. And sometimes it is hard to determine what's true from what's false. And so it's important to understand that election lies are dangerous, whether generated by a human or by a machine. What I try to tell people is this: because artificial intelligence is out there, I encourage people to not look at it as the boogeyman. We need to understand that it is a factor, and because we know the bad actors are going to be using it, it's important for us to also learn how to use it to our advantage for inoculation purposes. Because if we're having to constantly churn out content manually, then it is a major challenge. Because what ends up happening is you're constantly pushing it out quick, and we're still trying to catch up. So I tell people, don't be afraid about it, but we need to understand how it works so we can utilize it for the greater good. So this is just once again mis and disinformation, and this is all of the things we have to consider in 2024, which is why election protection is so important. And engagement opportunities. So you all already know how to engage. There are so many ways that you can engage, whether it's subscribing to local organizations' newsletters. You all are already members of Legal Women Voters, so you got that part done. Um, if you follow local government proceedings, this is very helpful to stay in the know of what's going on in your community. Attending town hall meetings, that's also helpful. So going beyond just keeping a pulse on things, actually showing up, letting them know that you care and you're paying attention. But more importantly, what we are here for today is to encourage you to volunteer to serve your community. So that at the end of the day is not just, oh, I'm watching, but I'm actually putting action behind the concerns that I feel, whether it's for my specific community, for the country as a whole. Utilize that as a springboard to encourage you to get out and actually serve your community. This is a toolkit. This is an election disinformation toolkit. So we talked about the importance of missing disinformation when we're heading into this election. So this is a helpful resource. I will also make sure that Catherine and Jane have access to this link and in this particular image as well, in case anyone wants it. And just giving you a brief overview of the full election protection. We have poll monitors, and I'm not going to go into great detail because the training will talk about that. Also, we have the nonpartisan poll watchers. Those are two different things. Poll monitors, briefly, they are outside of the polling place. The poll watchers are inside. Of course, you can serve as an election worker. Um, that's always a good way to engage. If you are curious about whether or not your local election authority needs support, you can always ask them how are they looking with their numbers. And then our digital democracy activists, these are our social media monitors or just our news monitors, because like I said, there is print journalism out there that's spreading election falsehoods. And then post-election observer, this is something for after the election. And Common Cause is partnering with Legal Women Voters Chicago on this, but there's going to be a specific team to handle that so that we make sure we have people at every point of the election up until the certification process. Who is election protection? Voter advocates, legal professionals, faith and clergy, you and your neighbors. Anyone is election protection. As long as you want to serve your community and you want to defend democracy, then you fit within the scope of election protection. So what can you do? Connect, like we're doing now. Organize. So we've done the groundwork of organizing, bringing our organizations together for this election protection effort. And then now it's on you to actually serve. Thank you.
Hi, I'm going to add myself because we're going to take a few questions at this point And I'm going to be here to answer questions connected to the league. And uh, what's going on is, we've been doing election protection. We've been getting credentials. Helene's been getting credentials for us forever to go and do poll watching and monitoring. And we've been doing it, what, 100 years? How old are we? It's something we've been doing. With this partnership, what we're excited about is when we join forces, we are now going to get the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. We'll get that legal background. So we don't just call the number that we've been pushing out on all of our literature, the 866 our vote. We don't just call that now. We get to call a bank of lawyers who are going to chop right through all of the craziness. We're also going to be able to work with them. They have lots of information on which areas have had problems in the past. Uh, According to Agnes, you will be able to sign up for any area when that time comes, when all those things show up. But we'll also be able to say, send me where you need me, which is what I did once before when I did election protection. And I was over in England and we had a problem. And I called the phone. I called that number, and I swear within 20 minutes, two guys in black pants and white shirts came over and dealt with the situation. It was beautiful. So that's what we're signing on for. That's the partnership. What is Common Cause getting out of this? All of our years of experience, but in particular, our volunteers. We're going to try and really, really ramp this up so that we get as many people doing this as possible. So, Agnes, that's my little rah-rah moment.
No, that was great.
So what Agnes is going to do now, we had a conversation about this, and the election protection training is not long and arduous in any way, and it's also incredibly informative. So I know some of you do partisan work on election day, but do know that the election protection can be early voting and more. So, even still, you might want to sign up and get something done, even if your election day is already booked. But we thought that seeing this would give you more information of exactly what's going on, would be the best way to describe it. And if you can't do it yourself, you could be an ambassador for us to go and find others. We're really hoping that we've got all these city colleges that we're going to be doing the end of this month. We're going to look for lots of young people. It's such a great way for young people to get involved. So it isn't just to get our volunteers, uh, but to get other boots on the ground as well. Okay, so I encourage you uh, to stick around for a few more minutes for the election protection, and when you're done, you can actually officially become trained as well. So we get a double here. Is there anything else that we want to what questions too? Do we have any questions at this point? You can put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and I'll unmute you, or you can unmute yourself. Okay, well, we'll have another question session. After the next, I'm gonna disappear and let Agnes take over again.
So the goal of this training, by the end of this, you should be able to understand what election protection is, what is your role, answer to common voter questions, and then how to escalate voter issues at the polls, and understand who to ask for help. Okay? Because my biggest thing to our volunteers is to understand that you are never alone in this process. Even if it's just you at your polling place, there is a team of people behind you. So I like to first start by a fun vocabulary game. Okay, so this is just to test your initial knowledge. So first and foremost, if you can just plop in the chat your answer to this question. Okay, number one, what is an absentee ballot? An absentee ballot. Just put it in the chat. Oops, sorry, I did not mean to do that. All right. If you put G, you are correct. You are correct. Great job. What about number 2? Early voting site. Early voting site. Early voting site. Oh, I'm getting a lot of answers. If you put A, you are correct. All right. Number 3, election official. Election official. Read this carefully. All right. Catherine, you should not have second guessed yourself. This, you were right. It was E at first. So if you put E, that is correct. And here's the thing. It says a county/state employee who has authority over elections, election official. Okay. So, and we'll talk about the difference with the other definition. All right. What about number 4, polling place? Polling place. Yes, you all are getting it. You all are amazing. H is correct. All right, number 5, poll monitor. Poll monitor. If you put D, you are correct. Number 6, poll worker. Poll worker. This is where some of you got tripped up on the other definition. Yes, so that should be C, a person hired by county or municipality to work on the team managing the polling place. All right. What about number 7, provisional ballot? Yes. If you put B, paper ballot used as a fail-safe when there are eligibility questions, that is correct. And last but not least, voting machine. There shall only be one option left. Yes. So computerized machine, this could be touchscreen or a scanner of paper ballots. Okay. Great job. I don't know if you all really need me because you did so well. All righty. So I briefly went over just over what the overarching election protection program looks like. But today, for this particular training, we are focusing on the core component of election protection, and that consists of our field volunteers. So let's talk about those particular roles and responsibilities. So you have 2 different roles. First, we start with poll monitors. These individuals, um, they handle and monitor voter issues from outside of the polling place, and answer questions, report any problems, and assist voters when appropriate. A lot of times people will say, well, if they're outside and most of the action is happening inside, what is the purpose for poll monitors? I want to tell you this. In some instances, there might be some aggressive electioneering happening outside, but if you're inside dealing with the voters, you wouldn't be aware of this. This is actually something that we saw um, during the primary election where you had people aggressively walking up to voters, asking them, how did you vote? Who did you vote for? And a lot of people don't realize that you're actually not supposed to do that, even though they're outside of the polling place. Um, a lot of campaigns and a lot of candidates, they have people on the ground and they're trying to do exit polls, and that makes sense. I understand that. But at the same time, there is a fine line between the traditional exit polls, and what goes into that, and then actually aggressive electioneering. And so things like that are important. Also, if there seems to be a line outside and there's something that's slowing down the process, that's another thing that's helpful to understand so that we can get a head count of how many people are waiting. Um, there are also times when people just want to be agitators. They're not going to come into the polling place to be agitators. They will do that outside where they can even have a vehicle across the street or be posted up in the parking lot across the street. So once again, I try to tell people all the time, whether you're in the polling place or outside the polling place, depending on where you are, the need might look different, but this is an important role as well. And it's important to understand that this is the first thing people are going to see when they're coming to the polling place. So if it is an intimidating atmosphere outside, they're less likely to walk inside. So eligibility, this is a 3-hour minimum commitment, and reliable mode of transportation. What we tend to do is actually group our places together. So for the most part, you'll be in a specific area, but we still want people to understand that travel is definitely required. You do not need to be an Illinois resident or registered to vote to be able to do this. So for people who might have some concerns about not being documented, or if they're concerned about, oh, I have to give my actual information to the election authority, this is one of those ways in which you don't have to worry about that.
You know, Agnes,
Yes.
I partnered with a young woman, and she didn't have transportation, but I was with her all day and I moved her about. So there's possibilities for partnership too, right?
Absolutely. And honestly, we in a lot of cases we like to actually have two people together. So if that's a concern, and especially because you all are a part of the league, we can try to match people up to make sure that if someone doesn't have transportation, they're matched with somebody who does have reliable transportation. I appreciate you for hopping on and saying that, Catherine, because there are a lot of different ways to address the need for sure. So another one is our nonpartisan poll watcher. So observe the process, assessing whether rules and regulations are followed from inside the polling place. This one is different. We are actually asking that this is a 6-hour minimum commitment. And the reason for that is because we have to get you credentials. Okay. Credentials are absolutely necessary to be able to be in the polling place. So we have to do the groundwork, and that means we need adequate time from our volunteers to make sure that we're covering as many polling places as possible. Illinois residency and being a registered voter is a requirement, and we want to make it clear, depending on the need during the 6 hours, you might have to be at one particular place. If it's a location where we're getting a lot of reports and we just need to have eyes on the ground, but you might also be moving around from one location to another as well during this time frame. So here are the responsibilities of field volunteers. First and foremost, you have to answer voters' questions. Okay. Then you help solve problems. You capture the information of voters who experience issues. You assist legal field volunteers with problems and questions. So, this is where we work closely with Chicago Lawyers Committee. Um, so yes, we have the hotline, but they also have certain people, as Catherine said, she had an issue, then people showed up with suits on, right? So this is where you don't just call the hotline, you're able to actually have that direct communication, because Common Cause and Chicago Lawyers Committee, we're constantly talking to each other in real time on election day. We're not talking to them through the hotline. So through this partnership with us, you all will be able to have that direct access. There'll be certain members of your organization who will have that direct access, but of course you can still report your things through the 866 our vote hotline number. However, this is when that partnership comes into play, and it makes it so much more different and so much more effective and efficient because you're not having to wait for it to just go through the queue. You're able to reach out to us and say, hey, we're having this issue, and we're able to connect with Chicago Lawyers Committee immediately and identify what's the next steps that need to be taken. So in terms of assisting the legal field, volunteers. They have their attorneys that are actually going out and about to address certain issues. And so, you being the front line as one of our people out in the field who witnessed the issue or the challenge, whatever is going on, we're going to rely on you to be able to articulate that so that they can determine what next steps need to take place to best assist the voter and address the issue. Also, we want you to identify problems that require intervention from your local command center. So there might be, even in the hotline, there's been plenty of times where Chicago Lawyers Committee has been like, hey, we see you have people placed in this particular location. We're getting reports into the hotline that something's going on. Can you send one of your volunteers there if you don't already have someone placed there? So this is where that, just because during your 6 or 3 hours, we might say, hey, we need you to go to this other, location. Understand that you might have a list of preliminary locations, but if there is an issue area and you're the closest, you will likely get a call to ask if you can go to that location to see what's going on so that we can properly report it and see if further legal action or assistance is needed. And then last but not least, ensure the polling place is accessible for all voters. This is a must, this is mandatory. So let's look at some of the other roles that you will see at the polling place. So of course you have your poll worker, and we talked about that definition in the game. You also have your election administrator. We also talked about who these particular individuals are. But they could be like your county clerk, your registrar, and then you have partisan poll watchers. I like to emphasize this because this is a person that is designated by a political party to observe at a polling place on election day or during early voting or advanced voting. Um, it's important that, yes, we are doing a poll watcher program, but this is a nonpartisan poll watcher program. And so when you do see partisan poll watchers, it doesn't matter if it's your neighbor, if it's your church member, keep your communication to a minimum because we don't want to give off any perception that we're partisan in any way. We are nonpartisan. It is great that the political parties are going to have somebody there to represent the specific candidates. That's normal, but we are there for our community. We are there to combat any mis and disinformation that's happening because we are not supporting one specific candidate. So it's just great to have nonpartisan eyes on what's happening at every step of the election. So even if you know them, it can be your family friend, a loved one, church member. Please keep communication with partisan poll watchers to a minimum. Remember, I said from the beginning, you are not alone. Support is always available. So once again, you're going to continue to hear us say this 866 our vote. If you don't remember anything else, that number is important. And this is that hotline that the Chicago Lawyers Committee and Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law for the entire country man. So this is where when people are calling that number, that's who that's going to. And then they decide, they either tell the voter or the volunteer how to address the issue, or they decide if someone needs to be dispatched out as well. Understand your field captain is here to help, okay? So if you're out in the field, everybody's gonna have an assigned field captain. That's gonna be the person you call when you need backup. Okay. So you flag your field captain if the volunteer election protection guide does not provide an answer to your question. If you're not 100% confident in how to answer a voter's question. You will also flag your field captain if you experience a unique issue that we do not address during scenario planning. Um, if you have a particularly concerning report that you're just like, you know what, this is concerning. Let me just find out if anything else is needed. It's important to remember if you believe an issue needs immediate attention, ask your field captain to escalate the ticket before you leave the site. So, this is once again, the escalation is being able to connect directly with the Chicago Lawyers Committee to try to get something resolved as soon as possible. That is the beauty of this partnership, having that direct connection so that we can try to escalate it and get it addressed as quickly as we can. Need additional assistance? Help is also available. So volunteers will be assigned a quality control member to assist with any of the following. So before election day, they can assist you with shift assignments and selecting your locations. They can help you access the volunteer election guide and reporting forms, and on election day assist with reporting form. So the reporting form is a digital form. We do understand that some people might not be able to or might prefer to not read something so small. So if you need additional assistance and someone can you can call somebody and be able to get your forms filled out if needed. We do understand too that sometimes you might not have the best internet access on your phone depending on how service is. So making a phone call and having somebody fill out your form is also an option if needed. Um, in terms of having access to the volunteer election guide and reporting forms, you will see later. When you actually sign up through protectthevote.net, you will receive information about a portal that we have for all of our volunteers, and that has all the things that you will need in terms of the training, in terms of additional documents that you would need, any support, and assistant documentation is available there. And also, that's how you will actually be able to sign up for your shifts. Shifts are not available at the present moment because we have to get polling locations, but all of these things will be in your particular tool suite. And so even your reporting forms will be in this tool suite too. So that's going to be the when you sign up, you'll be able to actually create an account and have what you need. I didn't realize my picture cut this off, but so reporting forms, volunteers will have two reporting forms. So your polling place reporting form, you submit this form before you leave each polling place. So every polling place you go to, no matter if it's a big issue or if it's minor, you're going to always submit a reporting form, or if nothing happens, we just need to know who was where when. So if you visit 3 places during your time, we need a reporting form for each place no matter what happened. If you visited 6, we need a reporting form for the 6 places you went to, so that if an issue happens later, we can say, "Okay, at what was the last time we had somebody there? Okay, what time after they left did an issue occur?" And then try to pinpoint what could have happened, or what was what was the difference in time, all of those things, so we know who's where when. And once again, your shifting tool helps us identify that, but as we have to go back and look at data, that's very helpful. And then for the incident report form, um my picture cut this off, but I know what I was trying to say. So this is a form that volunteers submit if an incident occurs at a polling place. So if an incident occurs, then there's a totally different form you're going to do, because we want to make sure that we're seeing in real time cases of issues at the polls, and that helps us so that while we're talking to the lawyers committee, we're not having to just go through the back end of OVL where reports are put in through 866 our vote. We can see in real time in our data quicker what's happening, and that way it makes it even easier to pick up the phone and call the Chicago Lawyers Committee. When to use an incident report form. If a voter informs you that they have had to vote using a provisional ballot, we need a reporting form for that, because there are other steps that are needed to make sure that that vote is counted. So we want to be able to touch base with that voter. Voters experience long wait times at polling places. If you notice a heavy police or security presence at the polling place, and that's abnormal for this location, I want to emphasize that. If it's abnormal, we want to know. Any instance of voter intimidation, so individuals blocking the entrance to the polling location, individuals berating voters, all of these things, we need an incident report for them. So some of the common issues and challenges in the field, this is going into more detail beyond the overview of us wanting to support election administrations. So these are examples from 2016, 2020, and 2022. So we've had multiple social media reports from reports that ISU ran out of ballots. This was something that was put on Facebook and people took it and ran with it. And so think about this. If on election day they're telling you they no longer have ballots and you were intending to go vote during your lunch break. Well, if you're under the impression they don't have ballots, you're not going to waste you're going to say I'm not going to waste my time and go over there if I know I can't vote. So sometimes it's just one person misunderstands something and it spreads like wildfire. Well, we want to make sure that we have people placed so that if that's happening, say for instance, myself, Jane or Catherine come across this, we can easily call up somebody if one of you are at the polling place to say, okay, so we're hearing this, but you're there. What do you actually see? And this is where what we do go hand in hand with the mis and disinformation. Okay. We've seen extreme use of security or law enforcement presence at polling places, and then targeting of non-English speaking or English as a second language voters. And then an officer has actually demanded that voters had to have their photo taken before they could cast their ballot. Now, anybody who's familiar with the laws here in Illinois, there is no instance where that is necessary. You don't even have to show proof of ID to vote. And I'm talking about like your driver's license, right? Like that's not mandatory. There are other forms of ID um or to prove who you are that are acceptable. Um a voter was asked to provide proof of ID. That is not a thing. That's not mandatory. If they don't have a specific reason to ask for your ID, like you're not showing up in the system, right? Like that makes sense. But if they're just asking you for your ID for you to walk into the building to be able to even try to cast the ballot, that is an issue. And that happened in both Champaign and Cook County. And then concerns around marking ballot with a Sharpie versus a pen. This was a huge thing in 2022. Um, Understand that these people have been trained, the people who are working as poll workers, and the election administrators, they know what they're doing. If they give you a Sharpie, trust me, it has been tested, it is fine. But some people are concerned about it bleeding through and then their vote not counting. So these are just a range of concerns that we've seen over the years, and that's come through the hotline. Intimidation of election officials and workers. So, this really increased in 2020, and we saw a lot of harassment and threats. Was actually a false claim of ballot stuffing in Champaign County in 2022. What was concerning about this was that um, where this came from, there was a vehicle parked in a gated area, okay? And this was an election worker's vehicle. And someone from the general public, some kind of way, was able to get into this secured parking area for election workers. And they saw ballots in someone's car. Now, what they did not know was they were test ballots. Nobody had voted on them. They didn't count for anything, but they actually took pictures of this person's car. They took pictures of the ballots in this person's car, and it was a firestorm. Once again, we understand ballot stuffing is a bad thing, okay? But that's not what was happening. But this is a security concern. So it's important to understand once this is not another state, this is Illinois, okay? So things are happening here, which is why we need you all to engage in this process and in this program. because there are a lot of things that's not put out there into the public like that. But when you work in this space, we're seeing a pattern. And let's be honest, um, some of the some of the narratives of, you know, elections being stolen are already being put out there, and we haven't even had the election yet. They're already trying to lay the groundwork. So we just need to understand what's at stake, and we need to understand that election officials and workers are under threat. And so it's up to us to support our community members who are working hard to make sure we have free and fair elections. So let's talk about how you respond to some of these different levels of intimidation at the polls. Um, First and foremost, please remove yourself. You are not there to de-escalate, okay? Your safety is of the utmost importance to us, so get to a safe place. Once you have been able to get to a safe place, we want you to capture the incident as best as you can. So if you can take a picture or get a video from a safe distance, we encourage you to do that because a picture and video is worth 1,000 words, and that actually helps us when you have someone from the legal team trying to understand exactly what happened. Support. Call your field captain. Like I said, you're not by yourself. You don't have to make any decisions by yourself. Wait. Wait for further instructions. Okay. So that is how you respond to any type of intimidation. We do not want you going up to them and trying to de-escalate the situation. There are other trained people to do that. We want to make sure you're safe, and really we want to make sure that we document the issue so that the legal team can step in and do what they need to do. All right, so for scenario planning, let's look at this whole idea of same day registration. I know many of you understand that this is a thing, but a lot of people across the state don't even understand that they can register to vote and vote on the same day. It's important to know that if a voter comes to the polls and they need to register and vote on the same day, so the voter must have an acceptable form of ID with them at the polling place to be able to register. And then they must complete the registration form. Once they have completed the registration form and they have their ID with them, they have to provide that information to an election worker. And then once the information is entered into the system and processed, and the person's eligibility to vote is confirmed, then they receive a ballot and they can cast their ballot to vote. Okay. Um, I've actually had the pleasure of seeing this happen during the primary election. This is amazing. I come from the South, okay, Tennessee and Georgia, where we do not have anything like same day registration. So to actually witness people being able to do it, I just thought that it was amazing. And I think that it's important that we all understand that this is something that is available here in Illinois. And while we may be aware of it, there are so many communities I walk into and they don't even know that that is an option for them. So if someone does, run into this issue, you can educate them on that and make sure that they understand the protocol they need to follow so that they can register and be able to cast their ballot on the same day. Acceptable forms of ID. That is another thing that's so great about Illinois. There is no reason someone should say, I can't vote because I don't have any form of ID. You can use your passport or military ID, driver's license or state ID, college, university, school, work ID, vehicle registration card, lease, mortgage, or deed to your home. You can use a credit or debit card, Social Security, Medicare and Medicaid card, insurance card, civic, union, or professional membership card, link card, public aid, Department of Human Services card, or your Illinois OID card. So, once again, if someone comes in and they are not registered to vote and you find out about that, ask them, do they have access to any of these? 9 times out of 10, they're going to have at least one of these on them. Casting a provisional ballot. This is when it is important for someone who does this is when the need for ID might come into play. Um, and so we're going to go over some examples of why someone would have to cast a provisional ballot. So if there's no registration record found in the precinct and they don't have their like ID with them to be able to register and vote that same day. Then they could be given a provisional ballot. If a voter is challenged and the judge upholds the challenge, a provisional ballot should be given to them. If a voter is required to provide ID but does not have acceptable ID, then a provisional ballot is needed. If a voter is listed as having cast a ballot in early voting or through vote by mail, but the voter believes that the record is in error. So the person shows up to vote on election day or and they have it on record that they've already voted, a provisional ballot is going to be necessary for that. If a voter is casting a ballot during a court-ordered extension of hours at a polling place. So, court-ordered extension of hours. If a polling place opens late, then what ends up happening is um we will work with the lawyers committee. They will try to communicate with a judge to try to get an extension because we want to make sure that every community has the same amount of time to be able to vote. We don't want anyone um, to have a shorter amount of time because we want everyone to be able to cast their ballot and we want it to be equal and equitable. So, if that does come up, if there's a court ordered extension because polling places opened late or there was an issue at the polling place that halted voting for an extended period of time, then this is where a provisional ballot might need to come into play as well. So, how to respond to voter challenges? You want to call your field captain or hotline immediately, and you keep the voter with you. Remember that voters have the right to vote a provisional ballot. The reason why we want you to keep the voter with you is because we want to capture their information. We want to make sure that someone is available to touch base with them because a when a vote is challenged, that is a totally different process. And we want to make sure that anyone who wants their vote to be counted is counted. So we want to connect them with um, attorneys and the legal team who will be able to talk them through next steps and what that process looks like. Ballot access. This is important. It does not matter where you are. Everyone should have access to the ballot. So there language accessibility questions. So English is my grandmother's second language. Will there be a Spanish ballot available? Can I assist her in filling out her ballot at the polling place? Here's the thing. It depends on where you are. Not all municipalities, not all counties actually provide um a ballot that's written in Spanish, okay? In Chicago, they're pretty good about it. But you might just happen to be in that one polling place where they don't have them because in that particular community, it's not something that's been flagged as needed. So, um, yeah, there are some Spanish ballots available in certain areas. Whether there's a Spanish ballot available or not, every voter can have an eligible person assist them at their polling place and help them to cast their vote. And it doesn't just have to be a language accessibility issue, okay? It can be other things that were required and have assistance. Physical accessibility. What do I do if my polling place is not wheelchair accessible? We've seen this, right? We know Chicago has a lot of older buildings. Everything is not always ADA compliant. Um, and so with that, it is important to note that people should be able to do drive up voting. So there are certain instances where voters can say, or curbside voting is a better term for it. If it's not accessible and somebody needs to cast their ballot, curbside voting should be made available. A lot of people don't know about it unless they ask about it. So if you were at a polling place and you see somebody um, who has who's concerned about physical accessibility to the polling place, you can go and tell whoever's working there, hey, we have somebody that needs to do curbside voting. Okay, that should be an option no matter where you are. Visual accessibility. I have a visual impairment. What assistance is available for me? So there are certain polling places that also have special machines for those who are visually impaired. Um, And so this is something that is available in addition to them having somebody there to assist them with filling out their ballot. So there should always be something there to assist voters no matter what their concerns are around access. And if not, we need to know that. That needs to be reported. That needs to be in the incident report form. And you need to call your captain and make sure that we identify and log that particular location so that we can understand why the location does not have the resources it needs to properly serve their community. So, what if any technical or logistical issues come up? So, first and foremost, you want to find out what the issue is. Is it a polling machine or is it building related? Ask the poll worker to clarify specifics. Then you want to ask the poll workers for an approximate time it will take for the issue to be resolved. If it only takes less than 10 minutes, just let the voters know who are there, like, hey, this should be wrapped up pretty quickly. Please don't go if you have the time. Please stay so you can go ahead and cast your ballot. If more than 30 minutes, we want you to call your field captain for further instructions because as it lingers on, this is where we might have to get the attorneys involved to extend the polling place hours. Um, and then last but not least, we want you to flag your captain so that he or she can make sure you have all the information needed to follow up with legal volunteers or local election officials. And be sure to note this in your monitoring report as well. All right. So we just talked about a lot of things. So this is just a brief do's and don'ts when you're out in the field, okay? So remember safety first. If you want to wear a mask, they're not required, but it's good to have on hand, especially when it's November, it's cold, and it's all types of things out there, okay? Be sure to dress for the weather. Like have your jacket, your coat, umbrella, whatever you think you might need. Charge your phone and bring a charger because, your 6 hour shift or your 3 hour shift, you might be on the phone a lot depending on what the need is. Bring food and water, but only for yourself. I mean, you can share it with if you're partnered with a volunteer, you all can share that, but just don't share it with voters, and we'll go into that too. Introduce yourself as a nonpartisan volunteer with Common Cause, and then poll monitors, you have to stay 100 feet beyond the polling location if you were not serving as a nonpartisan poll watcher inside the polling place. So they should have the electioneering zone clearly marked so you don't go beyond that electioneering zone. So you'll be in that space where people are allowed to do electioneering, and that is where you will see whether it's aggressive electioneering taking place or not. Don'ts. Do not enter the polling place if you are not a poll worker. If you're a poll monitor and you're supposed to be outside, stay outside, please and thank you. Do not interfere with voters' access. Do not promote candidates or issues. Do not answer questions you don't know the answer to. Do not incite, provoke, or escalate confrontations. Do not provide food or drink to anyone at the polling site. Do not engage in any partisan discussion under any circumstances. Do not wear anything that is partisan or issue-based messaging on your clothing, and do not plead your case to election officials or workers, okay? If anything does come up, do not escalate the situation in terms of going back and forth. Instead, reach out to your field captain, call 866 our vote, and once again, we will have support there to back you up in whatever issue you experience. A few best practices: arrive 15 minutes early, check in with whoever your identified field captain is once you get to your place so we know who is where when. That helps us in case the lawyers committee calls and says, hey, we're having an issue here. Do you have somebody out this way? We have in real time who's where because you checked in, right? And so you also want to introduce yourself as a trained nonpartisan volunteer with Common Cause. If you do end up having a conversation with a poll worker or an election administrator, be sure to examine the polling location. Is there excessive electioneering, voter intimidation? Are they opening on time? Are they trying to close early? Is the access for individuals with any type of disabilities or impairments, like Is it accessible? This is required regardless of prior identified needs. So I went over a list of what they can do, what options are, and we got to make sure that those options are available. Do not answer questions from members of the media. Direct their questions to your assigned field captain, okay? And then here's a checklist. Do I know my assigned polling location? So this is before you go out into the field. You need to ask yourself these questions. Do I have my credentials? If you're a poll watcher, you have to have your credentials to get inside of the polling place. Did I check with my field captain at the start of my shift? Did I check in? So once again, we want to know where you are when you get there. That helps us to know who's where. Am I thoroughly checking for issues? At the polls for example, voter intimidation, and a number of working machines. So making sure if they have 5 machines, that all 5 machines are working. If they only have 4 machines working, what's wrong with the fifth one? What's the plan to get it fixed? Did I take my picture at my location in my election protection shirt or badge? Listen, a picture's worth 1,000 words. The reason why we can have this program is because we are able to be funded to do this. But let me tell you one thing that funders love, and this is important for you all to remember it for if you decide to get funding for this type of work. They want to see pictures. They want to see your faces. They want to see people in their communities and what their dollars are going towards. So make sure you take your pictures, and this will be something that you can upload to your reporting form. Um, and then, did I complete my reporting forms? Were there any instances where I needed to report or flag it to my field captain? Okay. The tool suite. Like I said, once you register for protectthevote.net, you'll have access to the tool suite, and there will be a recording of the training, forms and documents needed, field captain information, quality control information, top issues in the field. And then we also provide an election protection explanation letter so that if who you're talking to is not familiar with election protection, you don't have to, you can always give a short and brief summary of it, but we also have a letter that we send out to the clerk's offices beforehand. So if there's any concerns, you can say this was actually sent before the election, so that your team or your supervisors were aware of the work that we're doing. Because believe it or not, everybody still is not familiar with election protection. All right, so this is the fun part where we get to test your knowledge. No worries, it's not the end of the world. Um, this is just literally going over some of the things I just discussed. There's no trick questions there. Please note that once you complete the beginning part of the quiz, there are different sections. One is going to be the nonpartisan agreement. What I need you to do is you'll see somewhere where you can click on that nonpartisan agreement link. I need you to read over that link, and then there's a part where you say, I agree to the nonpartisan agreement. Once again, because we are nonpartisan, that is very important. The other thing that you will see is a link for you to go ahead and register. Um, so I know Catherine has put it in the chat for you to get to the quiz, but for you to go ahead and register for election protection. And I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so you can see me. So it's important that you use that link because with our partnership with Legal Women Voters, we actually have a specific link for league people to use so that we can clearly identify how many people are have registered through the league so that we can make sure that you all have access to your numbers, and that's something that helps you in the work that you're doing. So make sure you click that link and you register through that particular link because that is specific for you all, and then you can say yes, I registered. And then last but not least, we're going to ask you about your t-shirt size, because if you know you want to volunteer, we want to go ahead and make sure that we have the materials needed for you. And we don't want to wait until the last minute to get your sizes, because we will be coordinating with Jane or Catherine to make sure that we have all the things we need for t-shirt distribution as well.
Are we ready for questions?
Yes.
Okay, maybe I'll come on with you so we can do this together. So you're not. Um, so that was really incredible, Agnes. I really enjoyed it. It, it was a refresher in many ways, and I think the good news is that you found a group of people who knew a lot of that and were just adding to what they know. So it sounds to me like what people should do now is to click on that second link, the quiz, after we're done, and that will complete the process. That will allow it. That will be that this was a training program
Yes.
and it's official, and they can go ahead and finish. Now, is the link to register at the bottom also that same League of Women Voters link? Is that the
Yes,
link?
it is. I made sure that the registration link that is provided in that quiz is the League of Women Voters link. Um, so whether they click the one in the chat or whether they click the one in the quiz, it
Right.
will be counted towards the league. Yes.
And so anyone who wants to finish it can do that. Anyone who doesn't want to take the quiz now but wants to register would just use that first link.
Yes, that is true.
Okay. Do we have questions? I'm gonna close the chat so I can see all of you guys. If we have participants here, can raise your hand and unmute yourself. Um, yeah, Chris, please ask your question.
Okay, I'm assuming we do not have to either register or take the quiz now, but we can think about it and do it at another day. I wrote down both links myself.
Yeah, you don't have to do it right now. The one thing I will say is with the quiz, it is easier to do the beginning. You have to do it all, but to go ahead and take the quiz once you've gone through the training because you have to have a certain score for us to say, okay, we're gonna assign you a shift. Because we want to make sure you understand the ins and outs. The beauty is if you don't do it right now, I know this is being recorded. So I would encourage you to just watch the training again before you do it to make sure that your score would be a passing score so that we can go to next steps and make sure you're assigned a shift in locations and receive your materials.
So Jackie says she can't sign the agreement. Jackie, do you have to take the quiz first before signing the agreement, or how's that work? Tell
Yeah,
us
so usually, so because it's in different sections, you have to do the quiz. Once you've done the quiz, it takes you to the next section, and you don't actually have to. So instead of actually signing the document, you just click in the Google form that you agree to it because we're collecting the data. So we see next to your name that you said you agreed to the form. So it's not about you actually signing on the website of where the nonpartisan agreement is. We just need you to mark that you agree to it in the Google form that you completed your quiz in.
And Edith asks a great question. And it really follows once they've done all of this, and you say once the polling sites are known and you can get that set up. Edith wants to know, she wants to volunteer with a friend? Can she request to be sent to the same location? I know the answer is yes, but tell her how to do it.
Okay, so yes, that is possible. I will say this. Typically, though, if we're gonna have multiple people, we like for it to be because one person doesn't have transportation, or because these individuals are in areas that we call I would say priority areas because we see a lot of reporting, so it's good to have backup. So if you know you want to go in with somebody else, we just ask that you be willing to go to some of our higher priority areas because that is where we like to have multiple people located. And so what's going to happen, Edith, is once you do the quiz, and you complete everything then what'll happen, you'll get notified that you can now sign up for shifts. And at that point, you can identify like, hey, me and, my friend are both registered. We are fine with going to high priority places. It might not be in my specific backyard. As long as it's in Chicago, we don't mind, going together so we can be together. And then we will be able to accommodate you in that way. So you can either let Catherine know, because I know she's the contact person for this effort with the League of Women Voters Chicago, and Erica, who is our national person who will be helping people with their shifts. So Catherine will be able to connect with Erica, and we can get that identified and make sure that you and your friend are together. The only thing we're asking is that if you want to be partnered with a specific person, that you be willing to go to our high priority locations for that.
And Cinda says, as in the past, she'll be working as an election judge, bravo Cinda, on November 5th. Please confirm that I should still register. I guess the question, Cinda, is, were you thinking of maybe doing some election protection and early voting? Or because she wouldn't need to register if she's going to be an election judge, right?
Right. If you're gonna be an election judge on election day, and you're not thinking of volunteering during early voting, then well, you know what, Catherine? I will say this. She can still register because for another election, we'll just have her in the database.
Ah,
And
yeah.
so, yeah, we keep this same database when we have midterm elections, when we have municipal elections. So I would still say yes if you're interested in finding out when we're going to do trainings for other elections, whether you're going to be an election judge this go round. You might decide for the next election you don't want to. But especially if you're interested in doing early voting, then yes. But it's always good to be able to have access to information and know when we are going to do election protection efforts. So if you're not going to be an election judge during that time, then this is another option that you have.
So I have a question. So I've got 3 students in my office. They all want to do election protection, and they're registered or not registered. I don't know. Would I use that first link for registering? Once they start that, everything will follow?
Yes. So once you've registered, you will eventually get access to the tool suite. And that is where, like I said, all of those documentations, all the documentation that you need as a volunteer is going to be there. So I always like to provide my volunteers with a specific guide, so that they can easily access certain information that's needed. That'll be the recording of the training there. How to actually sign up for a shift will be through there. So once you register, and then we let you know that the tool suite is ready for you, because you have to be put into the tool suite system, but we can't do that until you are registered. Then that's everything will be connected into that tool suite, but the first step is registering.
That's wonderful. I don't see any other questions at this time. If anyone wants to anything more, we are so on time. We have 4 minutes left. Good
Well,
job,
hold on. I see
Agnes.
Shirley put something in the chat. So
Oh, I
so
missed it.
No, it's fine. So honestly, you can do the quiz first, because I also put the link to register inside of the quiz. So it's like the questions from the training. Like I said, it's just making sure that you understood the key points of the training. And then after that, like I said, you will see a section about the nonpartisan agreement. Once you do that, it'll be the registration link for for you to be able to have access to the tool suite, because you're saying I'm registering to actually participate in election protection. And then your t-shirt size. So yeah, so once you get through the quiz, you'll eventually get to the link where you can register to be a volunteer.
And Chris has a question as well here.
Okay.
While I have physical limitations, I'm still interested in participating. How do I become a digital and traditional media observer?
Oh, wonderful. This is great. I'm glad you asked. So we do have some things coming up. I'm still working with Catherine and Jane because we are hoping to do something here at the beginning of the fall, where we will have we're hoping to do like a webinar to kind of launch the mis and disinformation effort. So Chris, what we can do is, can we get Chris's
Well,
information?
actually, maybe I should fill you in on a couple things.
Yeah.
So a lot of you know that the State League has a mis and disinformation task force. Chris, who asked the question, is our Chicago League liaison to that group. And was it just last week or the week before, Saturday before? A couple Saturdays ago, we the people that you and I have been in conversations with, Anne and Barb, they came and did a whole spiel on the task force and all of the things that they need. And they, since that, Agnes has been working with them, and we're trying to merge our reporting
Yes,
mechanism.
we are.
And so I think that basically there will be a league follow-up that can be used. Okay.
Yes. And thank you, Catherine, because I didn't want to say anything because I didn't know if we could say we could say anything
It's all,
yet.
it's
But
all coming
but yes,
together.
there. So we're excited about that as well. We know that missing and disinformation is going to be an issue. And Chris, to your point, that's exactly why I felt that it was important to have this component of election protection. I believe in meeting people where they are, and I believe in giving everyone the opportunity to engage in whatever way works best for them. So please know there is a partnership that is forming at the moment, and hopefully next week we will have um some more information to share so that oh, sorry. Yeah, so once we have more information to share, please know there's going to be ample opportunity for you to engage around the mis and disinformation component, because that is a big effort that we're taking on across the entire state. So I'm really excited to know we already have someone that's interested in that. Jackie,
Basically,
if you
Chris will be one of the first to know, and she'll probably write it up for our newsletter for us, right, Chris?
awesome, awesome. Jackie, did you already submit your quiz and you're just asking about your score, how you submit your score, or are you just asking how do you submit the quiz? Because I end up seeing the score on the back end, so you don't have to submit your score to me if your quiz has been submitted. You don't have to like send me your score. Okay. We wanted to make sure I'm covering everyone's question.
So I have a quick question because we have this partnership. When where you say identify yourself as someone from Common Cause, we can identify ourselves as someone from League of Women Voters of Chicago. Once we
Yeah,
are
yeah, you can say League of Women Voters. Just make sure you say election protection.
exactly.
That's like,
Yeah.
as long as
No,
there's that connection
yeah,
there.
just
Yeah,
in the
no,
slide, we would just replace League of Women Voters in those couple of places.
absolutely. But as long as we're Legal Women Voters of Chicago with election protection. That's the main,
Exactly.
like, honestly, that's the main concern,
You know,
that
we
election protection component.
no, it's all election protection, but
Yep.
in those two places,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah. And then finally, would it be, I know we'll have a shirt. Should we make sure, do we want to not wear our buttons? Do you guys wear your buttons? What, do you have a preference, or do you care one way or the other?
Ooh, honestly, I'm not opposed to you wear your button.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see that being a problem. As long as there's something on you that says election
Oh,
protection,
yeah, the t-shirt.
then I'm okay with promoting the league, all of that is perfectly fine. Chris, you do not, if you're not trying to be a poll watcher or monitor, you do not have to do the quiz. I recommend that you go ahead and register though, because we are going to have the mis and disinformation information. Ooh, that's a tongue twister. In that tool suite as well, because that is a part of our election protection. So go ahead and do that. And because we know you're interested, I will follow up with Catherine, so that when we have that information available, we make sure you're one of the key people who knows about the different ways that you can go through training for the mis and disinformation component of election protection. So you don't have to do the quiz for the poll watchers or poll monitors.
Love it. I am going to put a bunch of events that are coming up for the league in our chat. So anyone wants to do that. But I think we're good. I think I'm going to stop the recording on this and just take a moment to talk about what the league has coming up. And this was fantastic, Agnes. I love that we were able to combine this talk on what we're doing with actual training. And
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's one less thing that the members who attended today have to worry about. So I'm glad it worked out, and thank you.